415ers podcast is always brought to you by the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network, 95.7 The Game. That is Mark Grandy. I'm Evan Giddings. Please follow us on social at 415ers. Please download, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Well, the other big name, Mark, that was floated in kind of trade circles because of, I would say, the player's own kind of forwarding of his name was Brandon Aiyuk. And there are some decisions in which we've talked about that the Niners will have to make coming up in 2024, which is when Deebo Samuel's big money kicks into his deal, making officially over $20 million. Brandon Aiyuk has a contract extension decision to be made, which would probably put him in the $14-15 million range for 2024. And so John Lynch was, kind of asked about this as far as BA is concerned. He did not reference anything about a potential extension of that fifth year. But he did have a couple of quotes basically saying, quote, "We're trying to do something special this season. Brandon's going to be a big part of it and beyond as well. We're really excited about Brandon. He took a big step last year. Best is yet to come." That was the big quote drawn from John Lynch today as far as it pertains to Brandon Aiyuk. So maybe that changes how you feel about the way he talked about Trey Lance. But by all accounts, Mark, it seems like Brandon Aiyuk is a big part of this future.
It seems like it. I do want to say one thing. I've already seen some of this. I'm sure there will be more tomorrow. Beware when you're looking up Brandon Aiyuk, you're searching on Google, you see a quote pop up on Twitter. Beware that people are already misquoting this. You mentioned a couple of important words at the end of a sentence there. The quote is, "You can't keep everyone. We're trying to do something special this year, and Brandon is going to be a big part of that and beyond as well." I have seen people already cutting off the quote at the end of "is going to be a big part of that" and not including the "and beyond" as well. That's a really important part of this quote from John Lynch. So I just wanted to put that out there. Be careful where you're getting these quotes from, because some people are not including the full quote. But still, this is really interesting to me, Evan, because I get the sense of the Niners pushing all of their chips into the middle of the table. Again, the quote, "You can't keep everyone. We're trying to do something special this year." This year. And then he goes on to say Ayuk's going to be a big part of that and beyond as well. Okay, let's take him at his word. Let's take him that he truly believes and wants and expects and plans to have Brandon Aiyuk around for more than just this coming season. But if we can read between the lines here, Evan, we're trying to do something special, quote, "this year," and then we'll figure out the rest later on. That's what it seems like to me. The Niners are going all in to try to win a Super Bowl in the 2023-2024 postseason, and then we'll deal with the consequences after that. There are changes. There are shakeups coming. He started that quote by "You can't keep everyone, but we're trying to do something this year." Maybe Brandon Aiyuk is not that change. Maybe it's Deebo Samuel. Maybe it's someone we're not considering yet. But I think this line from John Lynch, Evan, just reinforces that this is the 49ers' best chance this coming season, because after this year, big decisions have to be made. There is not enough room to keep everyone. This year, they will likely have everyone. After that, it's not a guarantee. I think that line from John Lynch reinforces that, which we've been talking about all offseason.
Yeah, I think it sets up a theme that often teams that are competing with the same roster and rolling it over year to year and pushing some contracts that are originally front loaded, restructuring to become back loaded, these franchises run into these inflection points. I don't want to go as far as to say, because in football, it's kind of hard to call something a last dance, so to speak. But I do think that John Lynch is sending a message to everyone, Brandon Aiyuk included, even though he referenced him wanting in, beyond this year. There's tryouts. Everybody's spot is open. This upcoming year is going to determine, like you said, the future of the 49ers organization at the quarterback position, the wide receiver position, running backs, tight ends, offensive. Everyone is potentially on the chopping block after this year. Now, that doesn't mean that some guys and their contracts are going to be up. They're going to be moved. They're going to be shipped. But there's going to be a much clearer lane or path for the San Francisco 49ers at the end of this season. And Brandon Aiyuk is perhaps maybe the one that we're focusing on now because he has the most immediate decision to be made outside of Nick Bosa. But I think John Lynch wants Brandon Aiyuk to be a part of his future. And based on his last year, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, was the best wideout for the 49ers. Hope he can step up and get better. But I think he's looking around at John Lynch is looking around at the rest of his guys and saying, all right, this year we got open tryouts. Everything beyond this year is a question mark. And we are going to try only this year to win the Super Bowl. Anything beyond that, I can't comment on.
Yeah, I know, and he would continue talking about Ayuk, saying, yes, you always have to think out a few years ahead, but we're really excited about Brandon. You mentioned this part. I feel like he made another big step last year. The best is yet to come. So he knows, and of course, I mean, he's a general manager of a National Football League team. He knows that you plan out years in advance. The Niners aren't going into this offseason unsure of what next offseason brings them. They know the decisions that they are going to have to make a year from now, 2 years from now, potentially even 3 years from now. They have it all plotted out ahead of time. So this is not sneaking up on them. It's something that they have already thought about. They probably already have an answer. If that day were today, if the answer was due now, they probably already know what their answer would be. Now, things can change in a whole calendar year, of course. So a lot of time for a lot of things that could potentially happen. But they're ready for this conversation and this decision. Again, we talk a lot of it about, is it Ayuk or is it Debo? It could be, something somewhere else. I mean, a couple off seasons ago, the Niners did something that no one expected. They traded DeForest Buckner. Like it could be something that we're not even considering that could free up some money. And I know that move has largely been a bad one because the replacement, Javon Kinlaw, has just unable to, be healthy and play many games in his career so far. But the Niners could be eyeing a move similar to that, not necessarily, coming from the defensive line. I'm not suggesting that, but just one coming a little out of left field that we weren't really expecting. We expect it to be move on from a wide receiver, pick whoever you want, but you're not going to be able to keep them both. Maybe there is another, but regardless of what their answer is to this impending problem money-wise, Evan, they are already considering it now. So John Lynch is not telling us that, of course, but they're already considering it. They know how it's going to affect them next year. And I think the fact that he said, Brandon Aiyuk is going to be a big part of that this year and beyond as well, it might give me a little bit of confidence that they're leaning towards keeping Brandon Aiyuk around, saying goodbye to someone else, hint, hint, maybe Debo, and I know that's something you and I have talked about, and that's probably right now the right move, considering the construction of their roster. It seems to make the most sense. So I think we are headed down a path towards that decision ultimately.
Yeah, and even though the 49ers have a lot of dollars built up into certain guys, there are ways that they can kind of dig themselves out of it. And, maybe it's not Debo Samuel. I think the first potential out in his contract is in 2025. But I'm not saying that I believe these guys are not going to be on the team after next season, but a guy like George Kittle has an opt out at the end of 2024. Fred Warner has a 2024 opt out. Like that's where the 49ers might be able to get unexpectedly creative. I mean, Eric Armstead had an opt out at the beginning, or pardon me, the end of this last season. They restructured his deal so that he was able to get his dollars. The team was able to fit him in, and of course, they're figuring out how they're going to allot money for Nick Bosa. Some of those, basically, the way that this season plays out can not only affect Brandon Aiyuk and Debo Samuel, but a lot of guys and a lot of mainstays and beloved 49ers in ways that we really don't have an idea of yet. So, no, I think the comments, even though they're about Brandon Aiyuk specifically, are really about, like you said, the future of this team beyond this year, because right now it's pretty cloudy. The other guy that, of course, he mentioned in trades was Nick Bosa, and basically shut that down immediately. The hotline is closed. Quote from John Lynch. And I'm not surprised.
Hmm.
He's going to get paid. He's in all likelihood going to get paid towards the tail end of this preseason. He says, we got a pretty good track record of getting deals done. He's not lying. They reward guys when they should be. Nick Bosa is coming off his best season as a pro, might even have more in the tank next year. Who knows? But Mark, as I was talking about earlier with the way that you discuss your franchise cornerstone players, that is how you talk about them. And of course, Nick Bosa has proved it, has earned it. A guy like Trey Lance has not. But we've seen John Lynch speak more in that Nick Bosa type of quote with a guy like Brock Purdy, as opposed to the guy that's been in trade circles and rumors like Trey Lance.
You're 100% right. Again, what John Lynch said about Nick Bosa on Monday, April 24th, not a problem. It's what you say about your great players. That hotline's closed. In fact, it was never even opened. Okay, let's rewind a month. March 27th, 2023, at the NFL owners meeting, John Lynch asked about potential trades for Trey Lance. What did he say? Quote, "We like Trey right now on our team right now. We always joke, Kyle and I, we trade each other if someone gave us a good enough deal." The implication there, essentially, everyone has a price. That is how he answered a question about a trade for the quarterback he took third overall pick just 2 years ago. And he's asked about Nick Bosa potential signing an extension this offseason. He says, or he asked about the extension and then asked about potential availabilities. Has anyone called about Nick Bosa? And he says, yeah, that hotline's closed. It never even opened. So you're right. There is a stark dichotomy about how the 49ers have addressed Nick Bosa and how they've addressed Trey Lance. And again, it's not a bad thing. There should be a difference because, as you mentioned, Nick Bosa has proven to be an all-pro already in his short time in the league. Trey Lance has proven absolutely nothing so far, really through no fault of his own, just unfortunate circumstances, but he's proven nothing. There is no reason to be upset with John Lynch for how he's addressing Nick Bosa and how he's addressing Trey Lance. But where you can be frustrated with the 49ers and their handling of this, you don't get to say that about Trey Lance, that everyone has a price and that we are taking calls and say, yeah, but nothing's changed since we drafted him. Like, you don't get to say those two things. That's where I have an issue. You can call Nick Bosa your franchise cornerstone and you can say Trey Lance, but you also cannot, in the same breath, say we still feel the same about him now as we did 2 years ago.
Well said.